Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we're going to go ahead and jump back in time and take a look at another of these older Kenner Jurassic Park figures. This time, though, we are going to dive further into the Chaos Effect line, as we are taking a look at the Tyrannonops. Now, this is basically a Lycanops mixed with a Tyrannosaurus Rex, I believe was the original idea behind this. However, the sculpt is absolutely the same as the original Lycanops. Like, there's no difference as far as I can tell. And it's basically just a repaint. That's entirely it. So when it comes to being a Chaos Effect figure, it's not really much of an actual hybrid, but it is still a pretty cool looking color scheme for this figure, and in general is just nice to see that there are two different variants out there for it. I do have the original one as well, but since that one is not technically Chaos Effect, I'll probably review that one another time, and the other one has a much more naturalistic color scheme. But this one obviously looks really, really cool, and I have to give a shout out and a thank you to Siret Tech, who actually was the one that helped me to get a hold of this. He sold me one of his that he was actually getting rid of, and I now have it complete with the capture gear, which is really exciting. I don't honestly have all that many of my old JP figures with capture gears, so it's really exciting to have this one actually including all of that. So without further ado, let's jump to a closer look and we'll check it out from there. So, starting up here at the head sculpt of our Tyrannonops, you can see it looks pretty cool. You know, overall, I think they did a pretty decent job on the figure and on the sculpt. I think the one thing that the figure is kind of lacking would be fine detail, because for the most part, it seems very smoothed over when it comes to the texturing department, but you know, that's just something that I think at this point is pretty well known when it comes to this figure. And in fact, I would say quite a few of the Chaos Effect figures kind of have that going on. Even though this figure is technically just a repaint of an earlier released version, again, of the Lycanops, it does still have, again, almost like it's almost like it was made for the Chaos Effect line, where it has, again, that kind of smoothed out look to it, which, again, like I said, some of the figures do have. But you can see, as far as coloration goes, we've got a nice black here in the face. You've got some blue that kind of runs through the eye area, a sort of like a light yellow or an off-white there for the eye, no pupil or anything. You've got the teeth sculpted out, again, on the figure, and it does have quite the impressive appearance with those fangs, but you can see overall the teeth are basically a little too sloppy when it comes to the paintwork. Like, the paint is just basically over the entire area. Over here it looks pretty good, but when you look at it from the front, like, you can obviously see the white, you know, overtakes the gum line and everything. So it's just a little heavy as far as the paintwork goes. I did actually already have this figure prior to acquiring it from Siret Tech, but mine is pretty beat up. Now, this one's not in perfect shape, but it's in much better shape than the one that I did already have. And again, as we can see, when we open the mouth, you've got a tongue sculpted out in there. You can also see the teeth on the inside of the mouth on the lower jaw are painted and look okay. You've got a purplish tone of color for the inside of the mouth. You can also see some detailing here on the top on the inside of the mouth as well. And one thing that's cool about the figure that you may not really notice later on when we try to activate the action features, when you actually open the mouth, you can see the tongue moving. The tongue actually extends out as you open the mouth, so when you look at it from the side, it kind of looks like it's, you know, letting out a massive roar, though obviously that jaw goes open so far, like way further than it should. But also, on top of that, it's the upper jaw that articulates, not the lower jaw. But as you begin to move down through the course of the body, you can see we pick up the orangish tones. You've also got black, and then a light kind of a yellowish tone, and then black. So basically, the yellowish tone runs through the body, and then you have the black that pretty much outlines the yellow as you move through. As you continue to lead down, you do see some black spots showing up here and there, leading through the course of the body. We've got like some kind of like bumpy areas of the skin texture that you'll see popping up here and there. Decent muscle definition for sure as you move down through the course of the leg. You can also see that the toes are sculpted nicely, and we have painted nails for the figure, which is definitely a plus, and you see that through the course of all of the legs. Again, as you move up into the stomach, you can kind of make out the rib cage, so even though the actual texturing isn't really that great for the figure, it does still have some okay detail. We continue to have, again, the orangish tones moving through, again with the yellows outlined by the blacks, and that's pretty much the color scheme that you see through the entire rest of the figure. It's not super consistent as far as the placement of that patterning. As you lead out into the tail, you see again a much more frequent patterning leading out, but up here in the stomach, again, it's a little bit spread out, a little more sporadic. The animal looks very thin, which you can also see, again, the stomach's kind of sucked in here as you lead back toward the pelvic region. We do still have more muscle definition on the rear legs and everything, which is nice. But again, like I said, not much in the way of texturing or anything, and obviously it was the same case for the original version of the figure. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's a very cool figure, though, even though the sculpt isn't super highly detailed. I've always been a really big fan of this because it is such a very obscure species that I don't know if anybody else has ever made. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I can't really think of any others that are out there. Not saying that there aren't. I have a bad memory, but nothing that I can really think of. But you can also see we do have the JP stamp here on the side, which is really cool. But even if it's not the greatest Kenner figure, it's still a pretty darn cool one. And then you've also got capture gear. I believe the capture gear is basically repainted as well, just like the figure itself. This time you've got like a pretty cool bluish tone for the capture gear for the figure. It's very flexible, which is nice. Definitely helps to lock the figure up again in its capture gear if you have some flex to it. You also have this little piece that goes around the neck. This isn't quite as flexible, but still somewhat flexible, and I do love the fact that it does have the JP logo on it, which is really neat. And then you've also got the part that goes over the head, which you can see, again, basically the same thing as far as the first release, and obviously just a different tone of color, almost a metallic blue. And I think I stated earlier that there are 2 paint variants of this. There are actually 3. There was another version released later on as well, but pretty cool again as far as the capture gear goes. As far as the articulation and the action feature and everything, we do have articulation in the legs, which go forward and back. You can't completely get them to swivel around, but they can go pretty high, about that far back when it comes to this leg. Again, same deal for that leg. And then that leg actually helps to activate the action feature, and again, same deal there. Now, once you saw me pull that leg back, you may have noticed the mouth opening, and as you can see, it's a very easy to operate action feature for the figure, and you can see the tongue kind of extending out, and like I said, the jaw goes really high, making it look pretty goofy, but it is nice to have such a really easy to use action feature for the figure. And then again, the capture gear basically goes on just like you had seen it earlier in the review, and of course you can put all of the stuff back on to capture your Tyrannonops. Now, I'm not really going to put those back on, but you can see basically how they would go. I will put them back on eventually, but they're not the quickest thing to put on. But as far as a size goes, for a length, actually, let's take this off. For a length, you are looking at about 7 3/4 inches, or a little over 19.5 centimeters. And then for a height, to the top of the neck there, just a hair over 2.5 inches, or around 6.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Tyrannonops from Kenner, and you can see it's got a pretty good size to it. If you were to kind of compare it to a modern Mattel sort of Jurassic World figure, I would say it's roughly in like the Danger Pack or Strike Attack size range, somewhere in that area. I don't really think we need too many comparisons for this guy, but we'll give you just a few. Again, I don't have any other figures of this species outside of the Kenner one, and again, I do only have 2 of the 3 variants of it, so not really any point in trying to compare it with the other one, but you can see as far as the size next to a Mattel Raptor and Dilophosaurus, again telling you that it is pretty much in the size range of like a Danger Pack or Strike Attack type figure. And then one final random comparison with the Schleich Diabloceratops and Collect Day Deluxe Dimetrodon, just to iron out one final, idea, one final comparison here to kind of give you an idea of the size. So this Kenner Jurassic Park Chaos Effect Tyrannonops is pretty cool, honestly. When you look at the figure as far as being like a super out there, very colorful sort of a hybrid, You know, color-wise, we've got that going on for sure. The coloration is not natural at all, in my opinion. I don't think I'd ever see something like this colored in this way. So obviously they went above and beyond to give us a crazy color scheme for this one, and some people like it, some people hate it. I've always been a fan of it just because it is a standout figure because of that color scheme that it has going on. Like, there's no way you can look at that and not instantly kind of have your eyes drawn to that figure. It is the type of figure color-wise that's really going to pull you in. So, you know, I feel like because of that, it's very appealing in that aspect. The detailing on the figure is very muted and doesn't really look that great. When it comes to fine detail, there's not a whole lot there. You know, you do have a little bit, but when it comes to the Kenner figures, it's probably one of the least detailed figures that they had released. But still, it is a very obscure species. Again, Tyrannonops is not something you see very often, and even way back then, like, that's pretty impressive to see that they had a figure out for that. So it is really cool to see such an obscure species again released back then, especially in the Kenner line, because if you look at, you know, today's standards, Mattel's line, if they ever get to stuff like this, I could easily see them releasing something like this because Mattel is always pumping out obscure species. But Kenner, not so much. He did have a few, but not that many. So again, this figure, in my opinion, is kind of special because of that. You do have some articulation on the figure. The legs articulate pretty nicely, the jaw articulates, and the tongue kind of does as well because of the action feature. The action feature works nicely, pretty unrealistic as far as the amount the mouth can open, but still works really smoothly, very easily. And of course, you have capture gear on top of everything, which makes the figure a classic Kenner release. So if you are interested in grabbing one, my suggestion is, of course, to check eBay, Mercari, somewhere like that, Facebook Marketplace. You're bound to find them fairly easily on there, and grab it when you do. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.